Comrades, we are approaching one of the most vital days on the international calendar of the working class. And as we put out in the notice of this meeting, the demand for an 8-hour working day arose in the United States of America in 1886. There was a strike followed by a massacre. And now we find that despite all the efforts that we've made to maintain an 8-hour working day internationally, in many countries, that still has to be achieved. And now we see that the state itself has taken over May Day and turned it into September Day, Labor Day in America, which has taken the bite, out of the celebration of the international working class. If I could mention, this is the day in which officially Europe celebrates summer, but it's a renewal also of the working class internationally. The way in which we move from, the winter to the summer of the working class in terms of its rededication, its commitment to organize industrially and politically, to advance its interests, and at the moment, and critically, to stop the wars, the genocide in Gaza, the divisions among the working class, the forever wars in Africa, which go on and on unnoticed internationally, killing hundreds of thousands, and bringing about the peace which comes through the workers' revolution to achieve socialism, to be able to resolve the contradictions which exist in capitalism through the development of a planned economy and an international accord among all nations and the freedom of all peoples. So we have to rededicate ourselves to develop a program to be able to organize as never before. To give you one illustration, in South Africa yesterday, we celebrated our Freedom Day, but no one was celebrating really, except the ruling elite, because the working class has 37% unemployed. The youth have something around 65 to 70% unemployed. There's load shedding, that is to say blackouts, continually, and every kind of manifestation of social disintegration, such as, widespread crime. So that is exactly what that revolution, which took place in the 1970s, 80s, and into the 1990s, was meant to achieve. The point I want to make is that the working class has to liberate itself. We do not celebrate other people's coming to power, because that actually is not a celebration of the working class. The working class has come to power. It has to liberate itself. Now, comrades, we have a number of speakers. I'm going to put forward this order, mainly because as I mentioned, in the United States was the birthplace of May Day. We'll start then with Steve. We'll move on to Aman. And then I think we have a comrade also. I'm excused that I don't have the name currently, from Sri Lanka.
Comrade Nuwan from Sri Lanka.
Yeah, with respect, comrade. Look forward to hearing you. Okay, that's great. And we look forward to to having a lively discussion, as we usually do. Comrade Steve, could you come on?
Okay, well, thank you, comrades, and happy May Day, your preparations in every country for this important working class international holiday and day of action for workers around the world. And I think that the crisis of capitalism globally is obviously escalating, and in the United States that's reflected in the struggle of the working class. We're in a deep economic crisis where workers in the United States do not have an 8-hour day. Most workers, they have to work 2-3 jobs. They face AI massive layoffs. There have been recent layoffs at the United Parcel Service of thousands of workers of these warehouses shutting down. And this is after a contract in which the president of the Teamsters Union, Sean O'Brien, said that they stopped AI and robotics. That's what he told the workers. So the attacks that face the working class are moving us and the working class towards world war. The trade war, the rise of nationalism in the United States, and the attack on China, the effort to encircle China, are threatening a global imperialist war. In the United States, both the Democrats and Republicans are blaming China as the cause of the economic problems in the United States. The American capitalists are escalating investment in war. They recently passed $95 billion bipartisan bill for more money to the war in Ukraine, to the Zionists, the Israeli government, which is committing genocide in Gaza and the West Bank, and also in Taiwan. And they're organizing to militarize all of Asia in a war against China. So this is a very dangerous thing for the U.S. working class. Now, in the face of this, workers in the United States are having the largest organizing drive since the 1930s and 40s. I just returned from a conference of labor notes, which is a organization that brings together workers every 2 years. There were 4,700 trade unions from the United States and around the world at this. 6,000 were on a waiting list. And many of these workers, young workers, first time they've been in a union, they're exhilarated about the struggle in the working class of organizing and solidarity, particularly in the South. So on this May Day, there is a rising of the South, actually. There was just a victory of the VW workers in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And there are 150,000 workers at the UAW. It now has said that they want to organize. They're spending $30 million hiring organizers all over the country. If they're successful in organizing these workers, that will politically change the United States. That's a big victory for the working class. The capitalists have been able to crush and pit unionized workers of the North with the unorganized workers of the South. In fact, multinationals in Europe have invested in the South in order to avoid unionization. Now, I think that this breakthrough on as we go into May Day 2024 is a historic development. And I think that workers are excited. They're learning about socialism and Marxism. There's a growth of socialism in the United States. In fact, over 50% of the young people look at socialism as a way that they can advance their lives. Because as we all know, there is no future for the working class under capitalism. There's exploitation and destruction of their lives. So this, at the same time, what the working class faces on May Day is the rise of fascism in the United States and internationally, and the attempted coup and insurrection of Trump in the last election has really been unprosecuted. In fact, there's a recent decision of the Supreme Court. The discussion in the Supreme Court was that they're not going to allow a trial before the election for insurrection in the United States by Trump and his supporters. What this means is we have an insurrection court in the United States. We have an insurrection Supreme Court, which doesn't want to prosecute a insurrectionist. This is a very dangerous development, particularly if Trump wins the election, which is possible. Now, this the rise of the working class is coming at the same time that there's a historic mass movement of young people in the college campuses around the country against the genocide in Gaza. And unions, most unions in the United States, including the AFL-CIO, have called for a ceasefire. But it's clear that what is required is mass working class.
Oh,
Steve, sorry, we had some interference, so I think we
Okay.
muted. Yeah, apologies.
Okay. So the United States is the main supporter of imperialist war, and the passage of this $95 billion this past weekend for this war is an attack on the working class, not just in Gaza, and working class in the United States. So the fight in the United States really that we are taking up is a fight for a working class party, a working class political party in the United States. And there's growing interest and support for a Labor Party. However, at this conference, largest trade union rank and file conference, really probably in the history, recent modern history, post-war history, 4,700 workers, there was no discussion by the leadership of this about the political crisis, about the need for a Labor Party, about the danger of fascism. And I think that that's a great danger for the working class, not being prepared politically for what's coming. Now, on the struggle on May Day, there are going to be actions, rallies around the country. In the Bay Area, the ILW, Longshore Union, is closing down the docks. They're going to have a meeting. We're having a rally at 12:30 at Harry Bridges Plaza, he was the founder of the ILW, one of the founders. And also there's going to be a march of probably maybe 10, 15,000 workers at the Port of Oakland on the swing shift, on the night shift. So workers are becoming activated, but the union bureaucracy in the United States, the AFL-CIO, don't even want to debate on the issue of Gaza and the role of Zionism, because the leadership of the AFL-CIO, the majority, are Zionists. They support a Zionist state. So this political struggle in the working class is deepening, and I think that the preparation for a potential fascist coming power in a fascist movement is a real question for the working class in the United States. And I think on May Day 2024, workers in the United States are ready to fight, and what is really needed is a general strike against these attacks, uniting the entire working class. We are raising that as a class action against the attack on workers, the union busting, and the rise of racism by the right wing. At the same time, in the United States, as the comrades know, the United States is an international country. You have workers from all over the world who have come from the United States, from Asia, from Africa, from all parts of the world. So it really is an international working class. And I think we have to unite this international working class and link it up with the struggles around the world. And that is the role of a mass working class party, which we want to construct. And that is on May Day 2024, that's what we have to do. The struggle of the American workers is tied directly to the struggle of workers all over the world. The multinationals, the capitalists in the United States have factories all over the world. And we need to link up directly with workers around the world, including in China. So I'm optimistic, and I think that the politicalization of the American working class has not happened. There's been no working class movement since the 30s and 40s, but we are in the beginning of the development of mass working class movement in the United States, which has great potential. And I think that this is a historic development and should be encouraging for workers around the world. Solidarity, brothers, sisters.
Steve, many thanks for that and for making an important point about the organization of workers in the Deep South, which is anti-union territory. And this, as you mentioned, could make a great change in the States. If you could now move on to Comrade Amand, if you could introduce yourself a little more. I don't have a note to give you a full description of the work that you're doing. All I know is that you are leading the organization which is promoting the working class organization throughout Iran, which, as we know, is in a precipitous situation at the moment. And the working class is struggling to define itself and to be able to speak for itself. Comrade Aman, we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, David, and good afternoon to everyone again, and happy May Day. I'm Aman Gaffer, and I have been an active socialist for I don't know how many years now, but I am one of the members of the Haymarket Party official line in Iran. It's a working class organization which is struggling for the socialist revolution and obviously for emancipation of workers and riddance of the wage labor in Iran. In so far as the May Day is concerned, probably we have to say, maybe in continuation of what Steve was saying, that we're looking at a different world today. It's not that the capitalism is gone or anything else, but it's more the case of the situation that we are in. On the one hand, we have got a May Day at the time that we have got changes internationally, looking at the time where it was what was called as the Great World Order, with a single polar international scene to a multipolar and a change. And this change along itself is actually bringing repercussions of many different aspects of changes that we see across the world today. On one hand, we have the situation of the war and continuation of militarism, whether we look at it Ukraine or that of the NATO. We have the genocide situation of Palestinians in Israel, and we have huge amount of protests across the world at the same time, and a resurgence of I think to a large extent, general, global, civilized humanity and across the world who are actually standing up against this genocide and against all of the machineries of UN and many other ones that were internationally supposed to be representative of the people that were put on that pedestal. The world is changing. I think in Iran also we have seen those changes. The situation of today, May Day, is actually taking place, as I said, differently to what it was before, internationally and in Iran as well. When we look at the changes, the balance of power in Iran is not the same as what it was several years ago, especially after the mass movements that have been taking place. We have at the same time a huge amount of pressure, which I think is shared, whether in Iran or in Europe or in the US or in Africa, where the burden of the problems of capitalism is actually put on the shoulders of the working people everywhere, with the cost of living, inflationary rises everywhere, low wages, and effectively dismantling of many of the gains that workers have had or expected to have. After 100 odd years, the issue of working for 40 hours a week or 8 hours a day, as David was mentioning earlier, seems to be far-fetched in many places. And in addition, even the day of May Day is not still a holiday in many places, nor are workers freely allowed to have their own organization or even the right to strike in many places. If the technology is moving on one side, after 100 odd years, where there's a chance for even going across different planets, it's just unbelievable how many are starving and dying every second across the globe for a variety of reasons of things that could be easily managed, whether we think of it in terms of the climate change or whether we think of it in terms of hunger, whether we think of it in terms of the rights to having a decent life. All of these technologies and variety of inventions and the benefits that humanity has created under the hand of capitalism have been eroded and have been moved away from the gains of the people in general. At the same time, we have had also huge protests growing. If you look at across the last year, the number of protest actions which were taking place internationally, whether we're looking at the change in the timing of the dates or the years that one has to work before getting a pension, across Europe, or whether we look at it in terms of the achievements that workers had, like that of the auto workers in US, like that of the different parts of the transport workers across Europe and many other places, we see a resurgence on one hand, not just among the youth, but just also among the many sections of the working class after the downfall of all of the illusions, as I said, that it was with regard to social democracy or any form of misguided approaches that wanted to retake the benefits and the gains of the workers. We see those changes, and these are commonly seen. It is also probably important for me to mention in here that in Iran also there have been a similar struggle, whether we're looking at the struggle against the economic conditions, whether we look at it from the protest from the point of view of equality and freedom of all, and whether we look at it from the point of view of fightbacks against sacking of workers, against the dismantling of any parts of the society where workers had managed to force the state to provide social gains for everyone, and cutting of all of those and protest against all of those in terms of hygiene, in terms of health, in terms of being able to have a decent place to live, and against the war, have been sort of at the forefront of the protests that have been taking place in Iran as well. Let me just sum up in one point, and that is that May Day, as was mentioned earlier, is only a day of the workers internationally. It's one day where we could say it is our day. It is one day where it is not the day of any other thing. It's not against this or that state in particular, but it's a day of solidarity of workers across the world, in all countries, and their right to stand up and declare once again, and I think in this occasion, let me say it on behalf of the workers in Iran, to say that the international solidarity that exists, the international solidarity of all workers against the capitalist system, against the system of wage labor, is still common. And again, we re-pledge our solidarity and our unity with workers across the world to say this is our day. It's a day of celebration. It's a day of joy. It's a day of identifying that we can make a change, and by making the change, we can actually free not only ourselves, but the whole humanity as a one and the same thing. Happy May Day greetings, and I look forward to hearing all of the other comrades from all the other places as well.
Thanks so much, Aman. That was very revealing, particularly as we know that the Iranian workers are in a sense in a frontline position, both in the geographical sense, but also against what is an increasingly despotic regime, and which is countering workers' interests. We look forward to hearing more of your struggles. I wonder if we could now then move on to our Sri Lankan comrade to speak. If I've got the name correctly, and I apologize if it's not, I think it's Comrade Nuwan is to speak. And we very much look forward to hearing what you have to bring to our discussion. Please come on board, comrade.
Yeah, hello, comrades. Can you hear me? Hello, comrades.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah. Thank you very much, comrades. Actually, 1 second, comrades. Yeah, of course. Basically, I'm representing Frontline Socialist Party and the Workers' Struggle Center in Sri Lanka. So, of course, we are going to celebrate the May Day with various challenges as far as the Sri Lankan working class is concerned. This May Day, we are actually celebrating with various of slogans in respect of rights of the working class. Yeah, you all are aware the Sri Lanka actually in 19th century only Sri Lankan working class has been emanated due to after the especially under the rule of British. Thereafter, in 1948, Sri Lanka got the independence, and the British actually very smoothly transferred the power to the local capitalist class. Until 1978, actually, there was no fully implementation of neoliberal policies in Sri Lanka, but 1978, with the regime change, there was a fully implementation of neoliberal system in Sri Lanka. However, due to 30 years civil war, the capitalist class was unable to properly implement neoliberal policies in Sri Lanka. But after 2009, the end of the war, actually the capitalist class wanted rapid implementation of neoliberal policies, basically very detrimental to the working class of the country. Because of the influence of the Cold War era, still the Sri Lankan, working class is concerned, the laws are very strong and very favorable to working class. However, after 2009, always the government wanted to have a certain very considerable changes of the laws, actually curtailing rights of the working class of the country. However, due to the very strong union activism, the then government was unable to implement those reforms as they wished. However, you all are aware in 2022, there was a massive economic crisis. It was an unprecedented crisis. As a result of that, entire economy was collapsed, and the government declared that Sri Lanka is a bankrupt. So after that, Ranil Wickremesinghe, the present president, became to power through a parliament conspiracy. Subsequently, now his main policies are basically based on disaster capitalism. What they are doing using this disastrous situation, he is trying to implement these neoliberal policies unprecedented manner. So therefore, this May Day, our working class is celebrating with those challenges of this disaster capitalism. So basically, there are three types of challenges that we recognize in the existing situation. Number one is, supposedly they are telling the main, actually, for this economic crisis, the main solution that they are going to implement is IMF intervention. Through IMF, now actually they are willing to get around 3.5 US dollars, billion US dollars as a bailout from IMF. The IMF giving these loans based on various terms and conditions, which are basically very, very detrimental to the working class of the country. There are two types of things we identified through the IMF reforms. Number one is now currently actually taxes, the direct and indirect taxes have been drastically increased. At the same time, cost of living is very high. But however, the working class is concerned, wages and salaries have not been increased. Therefore, due to this living cost, the working class is facing very severe challenges. At the same time, the privatization is one of the main conditions of the IMF. Right now, already they have listed around 400 state enterprises to be privatized. So basically, Sri Lanka Telecom, Sri Lanka Insurance, and Ceylon Electricity Board. So when these kind of institutions are privatized, of course, it will directly affect the working class. So already they are going to introduce certain voluntarily retirement schemes targeting the working class. Therefore, this privatization policy actually imposed through the IMF will be very, very detrimental to the working class is concerned. Secondly, there's another challenge as far as the working class is concerned, that is law reforms. As I said earlier, Sri Lankan laws are very strong as far as the rights of the workers are concerned. Now the government is going to repeal certain laws, especially the employment termination of employment law, trade union law. So by repealing these laws, they are going to actually curtail the rights of the workers, which workers have been enjoying for last 8-9 decades. So main thing is right now, it's very difficult to terminate the employment of a worker without giving proper reasoning. If there is a unjust termination, of course, government can interfere with that through the Commission of Labour. However, the new laws actually going to be introduced, giving full right to the employer to terminate the employment. At the same time, working hours, we know after the first international, Comrade Karl Marx and all these comrades actually fought for 8 hours working day. So right now, our working class is enjoying that right. However, with new reforms, they are going to completely remove that, actually giving opportunity to the employers to exploit the labor of the workers. So therefore, likewise, there are certain attempts to completely do the reforms as far as the laws are concerned. At the same time, thirdly, there's one of the main challenges, due to the economic crisis, from the foreign debt institutions are pushing government to somehow restructure the debt and start repayment of the debt installment. So when in the guise of restructuring the debt, what they are going to do, there are social securities that having enjoyed by the working class. Those are employment, the provident fund and trust fund. So these are the main social securities that having the working class. However, what the government first did, they in the guise of restructuring Yes,
I'm sorry to cut in. If you could draw the remarks, you'll have a chance to come back again.
Yes.
But if you
I'll
could
wind
bring
up
it
now.
in so that we all have a
Yes.
chance, you see?
Sure,
Yeah.
Comrade. Sure, Comrade. So in
Yeah.
the guise of the debt restructuring, actually they are touching these public security funds. So these are the three main things that we have to highlight in this May Day. So therefore, comrades, as the comrade from Iran very correctly pointed out, locally our workers are fighting for their rights. At the same time, they need fully support from the international working class. Therefore, we have to work together. Especially we have common challenges as far as the world working class is concerned, these imperial attempts and intra-imperial wars. At the same time, as far as domestic struggles are concerned, I think we need unity. So we will at least always we are talking about this unity, but going beyond that, we need some certain activities to strengthen the working class of the Sri Lanka, at the same time the working class of the world. Thank you, comrades.
Some marvelous points. Much appreciated, Comrade Nguyen. Sorry if I had to come in a little. What we want to do is to now open up the discussion. I'm sure that comrades would like to share a little more as we prepare the celebration for May Day. I know that there may be comrades from Namibia, South Africa to come in, and I see already Finn has indicated. We've had a roundup of countries which are at a critical point: Sri Lanka, Iran, and the United States. And we hope to hear from other comrades about how they're preparing, how we can unite our struggles internationally. Finn, please come in. Mm-hmm.
Yes, comrades, on May Day, the Dublin Council of Trade Unions will be holding a demonstration, as we always do, through Dublin City, with all the trade unions in the city marching behind us with their banners and their paraphernalia, plus community groups and activist groups, anti-right-wing groups, housing groups, and so on. And then, as we march through the city, we'll pass the statue of James Larkin, a great Labour leader who was born in Liverpool, but is a very significant figure in Irish Labour history. The march will end close to the statue of James Connolly, a great Marxist, a great trade unionist, a great socialist, who was executed in 1916. The previous year, James Connolly spoke at the Dublin Trades Council May Day demonstration. He was the principal speaker. So that's the tradition that we're coming from. Myself, I'm the president of the council, and when I address the meeting near the James Connolly statue, we expect to have a big crowd. I will be raising the issues that we raise here on Win. And the advantage of this meeting today is that I'll be able to cite the ideas that were raised by Nuwan, Aman, and of course Steve. And it's significant because the first Irish march on May Day was in 1890, just 4 years after the Chicago massacre. And that rally was addressed by a leader of the Liverpool dock workers. Some of the marches that came after that were massive. There was 20,000 marching in 1893. There were huge numbers again in other May Day marches. So May Day is a significant day in Irish labour history, and particularly in Dublin, where all the main trade unions are focused. The striking strikes that took place around the period of the Chicago Haymarket massacre in 1886, a lot of Irish people and Polish people were involved in that movement. And it's worth noting also that a few years previously, before the 1886 May Day events, there was 20,000, sorry, not 20,000, there were a lot of Irish workers working in the anthracite mines in Pennsylvania. And 20 of them were hanged following disputes from the mine owners in Pennsylvania. So there's a tradition linking Irish workers to the movement in America. It's worth recording as well here that the 4 workers' leaders were hanged in 1886 in Chicago. August Spies, Albert Parsons, Adolf Fisher, and George Engel were hanged. So it wasn't an easy achievement to fight for the 8-hour day. And the slogan of 8 hours work, 8 hours rest, and 8 hours to use as you will, that's very relevant today. Because even though we have the 8-hour day, lots of people work way in excess of 8 hours, as Steve has alluded to. In addition, we have precarious employment, where you work when you get a text message to say get into work, and this new kind of economy that's developing. So 8 hours used to mean 8 continuous hours in the daytime. It can now mean any 8 from the 24. So we haven't got the 8-hour day as it was expected at the time. Frederick Engels wrote about the strike or the struggle in Chicago, and the Second International was formed 3 years after the Chicago hangings. And May Day was described as International Labour Day at that time. The idea being that you would commemorate the deaths, the judicial murders of the 4 trade union leaders in Chicago. And in addition, that the labour movement across the globe unite on that day, so that day becomes our day, the Workers' Day. And that's a significant fact to remember, that it's not just a sentimental event. It's not like the first summer day or when the blossoms are appearing on the trees. It's to commemorate the deaths, initially, of 4 workers' leaders who were judicially murdered in Chicago, and also a day for a struggle for the 8-hour day. So the Second International arose from the struggle, in a sense, for the 8-hour day. The Trades Council in Dublin, as I've referred to, in more recent years, have led massive demonstrations. In 1978, I mean, Jimmy would remember this, the Trades Council called a general strike, and 20,000 people came out on strike. On a different occasion, 200,000 workers marched through Dublin behind the Trades Council banner at that time. On the issue at that time was tax. There was an unfair tax system where employers, big farmers and richer people were given tax concessions, but workers were paying huge rates in taxation. So they became known as the tax marches. Then the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, which covers the whole country, taking a lead from the Dublin Trades Council, called a national strike on the issue of taxation reform. And 700,000 people took part in that strike, again initiated by a local body. The reason I put so much emphasis on the local body is that that's where the organisation of trade unions begins. It starts in the workplace, in the cities, in the communities, because the trade unions have to link with the community. It's not simply a movement of people at work, it's a movement also of their families and of communities. So the reason I mention these big achievements is because it shows what's possible. Now, in more recent times, because of bureaucracy and the linking up of the state apparatus with trade union leaders, every country will be familiar with this phenomenon. The workers are getting put into a subsidiary role. So the shop stewards movement, the rank and file movement, the movement on the shop floor is diminished because of the significance of the national bureaucracies and the agreements they try to make. At our meeting on May the 1st, the speakers will include a speaker to talk about Palestine. And she is herself a member of a group called the Trade Union Friends of Palestine. But the issue in Gaza and in Palestine is a trade union issue. It's a workers' issue. It's not an issue of Biden and the Saudi Arabian monarchy, as it is. The Qatar people coming together to find some solution for these people in Palestine. This is a workers' movement. The Palestine and the Gaza struggle is a workers' struggle. And it's important that trade unions see this as having significance for the entire working class. So we'll have a speaker on that. We'll also have a speaker on the anti-right-wing movement, which is very significant now in Ireland. There's a growth of an anti-immigrant mood among certain sections of the population. There's now 4 political parties which have been formed by these right-wing groups who are basically, like they are in the rest of Europe, an anti-immigrant front, using immigration as an excuse to mobilize. There's been a lot of violence. There's been 20 fires, 20 premises that have been set aside for immigrants in Ireland have been burnt to the ground by these right-wing groups. So we'll have a speaker on the anti-right wing at our rally. So the principal theme of the rally, though, is better in a union. That we want workers to join unions, not to be pushed onto the fringe and held at arm's length. All the wealth in society is created by workers. In building, workers lay the blocks, workers dig the foundations, workers put in the electrical fittings, the plumbing. In the hospitals, workers look after the patients, care for the patients. Workers transport patients from the wards to the theatres. Transport, buses, trains, trams are all run by workers. So this day is our day where the workers demonstrate their power and their significance in society. So if the workers have that much significance, why then do their leaders go cap in hand to the government asking for concessions? We have the power. The working class has the power to change society. And that'll be the theme of our rally, to get workers to recognise the power that they have and to use the power that they have in order to change society. So again, the issues that I'll be raising when I address the meeting are the issues that we're in agreement about here, about capitalism, about the sources solution, the need to mobilise, plus the ideas we learn at meetings such as this, the WIN meetings which we have on Sunday afternoons. So I'm grateful to the comrades for the contributions they've made, for the opening contributions, and insofar as we can, we'll integrate all these kind of ideas into the address at the Connolly statue in Dublin on May the 1st. Thank you, comrades.
Thanks so much, Finn. Some marvelous concrete details and kind of an update on our history in relation to the May Day in Ireland. Comrade Rolf, just before Comrade Rolf, you come in, I see Marcia, if you would like to participate, you mentioned that this is something new to in your experience. Please, it would be good just to raise some questions and to maybe participate as you feel you can. Comrade Rolf, would you please come in?
Yeah, hello. Well, I will tell a little about the situation in Denmark. Well, normally everybody thinks that it's a very peaceful place, not least because of the working class. The welfare system we have in Denmark is because of the struggle of the working class in Denmark. But we have a very big tradition of very big May 1st demonstration in Denmark. It's all over the world, all over the country, and especially big, of course, in the big cities. And it will also be so on Wednesday, because there's a very big discontent with our government now. The government is a coalition government. It is the social democracy in coalition with two bourgeois parties. And I think that the policy of the social democracy now is the most right-wing ever in the history of the social democracy. Well, they are spending a billion of kroner in Denmark on military equipment all over the world, and they have made tax reduction, and their xenophobia is more or less racist against refugee and immigrants. So this has meant discontent inside the social democracy and in the unions, and also in the population. The government is now, in the opinion poll, only on 30% of the votes. The May 1st demonstration in Denmark, they are organized by the unions. And this government got into conflict with the unions already from the first day, more or less, because they abolished a holy day, a day free for the workers in Denmark. It's the first time in history that they have prolonged the working hours. Normally it's the opposite, that it is reduced. And we saw last year a very big demonstration against the government. Well, it was organized by the unions, and we saw that at May 1st, the May 1st demonstration last year, the top social democrats was not allowed to speak at the May 1st arrangement. But I think they have softened a little, so they're allowed this year. But besides the big demonstration against the government, we have seen a very big demonstration also against the Israeli genocide in Gaza. We have seen that, well, it has not been, it has been ignored in the press like other places. Well, the present government, they said they would have a policy for the middle, but as you can see, the only 30% is backing up now. And what we have seen is that the right wing and the left wing has been strengthened. So what they have achieved is a polarization in the Danish population. But I'm looking forward to this May 1st. I think it will be very big, especially if the weather is good. Then many people, many workers will turn up. So greetings from here also. I hope that, well, everybody will enjoy and have a good May 1st. Thank you.
Many thanks, Rolf, with many interesting details, which shows again internationalist outlook among the Danish working class. You know, we have present, and I just want to make a particular point about this, because maybe it's not known to all comrades, but Comrade Marcia is participating from Namibia. We hoped also to have one of the Namibian trade union leaders here, at least to be able to pass greetings and to make acquaintance through WIN with other groups. But Marcia is a leader of the security guard workers in Namibia. I won't give all the details, but in speaking out and fighting for the workers' cause in her company, she has been suspended, and now for the last 6 months has been in a battle to try and get a hearing and to be able to get reinstated. Comrades have participated in giving her support, which is marvelous. We've been able to ride a big campaign on her behalf with the Ministry of Labor and with the employer called Eagle Night Watch. But every action that has taken place internationally has been used against her. She's won the case, we hear privately, but actually now they're bringing on further and further charges. So, comrades, often solidarity seems as though it's a short-term process, but actually workers are engaged in a long, drawn-out struggle in many cases to be able to get even minimal demands. As the comrades in Sri Lanka mentioned, the laws change. In Namibia, they're not changing the law, they're just making the law inoperable, not working on the side of the workers, and they drag it out. If you get a favorable decision on your side, then they drag on and on and on until they get the decision that they want. That is called the Stalingrad process. In other words, you appeal. This is what Trump does when he faces the courts. We may or may not find that Comrade Marcia, is able to participate, but we would love to hear just even a word or two from you, Marcia, if you could. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Afternoon, comrades.
Afternoon.
Yeah, I actually don't have much to say, but I'm looking forward to participate in this year's May Day. Yeah, we actually also planning, especially as the security workers, we are planning to be to participate. We are planning to march and to raise our concerns. So I hope things will change if we stand up. I just hope there will be a difference, because we've never really, we were not really into standing up for ourselves. We were not really fighting, but I hope this year will make a difference. Thank you.
It's marvelous to hear you, Marcia, and you're a brave soul, because we know that you're under surveillance and in danger at all times. And we will, we will come back to all comrades, in relation to this struggle, as well as Comrade Lawrence and other comrades who actually are involved in a very drawn out procedure, which is wrecking lives, making it extremely difficult for the comrades to survive in Namibia at the moment. Comrades, I invite other participants to give their hand. We've had some extraordinarily interesting points. Steve, well, if anyone else would like to come in after Steve, sorry, please come in. I see that Steve is raised, but maybe I didn't see you carry on. Please come in. Yeah. Mm.
Will I come in first, David?
Yes. Well, look, I'm a little bit puzzled what to do. Steve, if you have an immediate point to take forward Marcia's point, and then just in very brief ways, so we don't lose that thread. Kerry and I have to apologize. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that, comrades, that the struggle of the security workers in Namibia is of international importance, because what has happened in Namibia is that the Chinese companies, private and public, have taken over all the uranium mines and marble mines. And what has happened in her mine, which is the largest in Namibia, is that the Chinese have contracted out the work to subcontractors, of which the security firm is one of them. And these workers are making maybe $1 a day, slave labor wages. And the security workers there, they call themselves security workers, but they're actually doing mine work. and that's one of the issues. So the Chinese employers have basically contracted out the work of the mine to subcontractors and then forced these workers to do mining work. So it's basically an international issue of contracting out in South Africa, all over the world, that the main companies do not want workers to get decent wages and conditions, so they subcontract out their work to other companies. And that's exactly what's going on in Namibia. And I think that the effort that the comrades made to support her and the other workers of Namibia has been very important. As a matter of fact, she won her case that she had been falsely accused of the company of violating the law. And the company then, the lawyer for the company, wrote a statement, a letter, which we have and we can get to everyone, saying that because she had gone to international, she publicized her case of termination internationally, that was another reason to fire her. So in other words, talking about the labor conditions to us and other workers internationally was the reason she was being terminated, which is a flagrant violation of international labor law and probably also the law in Namibia. But I think they're very fearful of international solidarity. That's why we need to step up our campaign for Marcia and Namibian workers. And it's the same struggle all over the world. But in this case, as a result of an international campaign, we actually were successful, partly in getting a victory for her on that particular charge.
Thanks, Steve, for the update, and we'll return to this and further discussion. Kirian, apologies for cutting you out, but you now take the platform. Look forward to hearing you.
Thank you, David. And May Day greetings to all the comrades from the other part of Ireland, or the north of Ireland, or Northern Ireland. Then give a report from Dublin, underlining how important May Day is in Dublin. It's also important just to say here that May Day is a very important event. The May Day March, a very important event in Belfast, which wouldn't be widely known probably outside the island, given that Belfast internationally is known for division between workers, Protestant Catholic workers. May Day is actually a very remarkable event, and if comrades ever get the chance, if you're ever in this part of the world, you should attend. It's quite a large event. Northern Ireland is a small place. It's only a population of under 2 million. But 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000, up to 5,000 workers will attend the event. It's held on a Saturday, the closest Saturday to May Day. A couple of dozen unions take part, and the actual procession of the trade unions illustrates the power of our class, in the sense that the unions themselves represent something, an answer to the division amongst workers on these islands. Because you have workers, you would have trade union banners from trade unions that are based in Britain and England, Scotland and Wales, but also recruit members in Northern Ireland. You have other unions which are Dublin based, Irish unions which recruit workers in the south of Ireland and also in the north of Ireland. You have other unions which are based in Northern Ireland only, like several of the teachers' unions and the civil service union. And then finally you have Unite, which is a very large union, which would call itself an international union. And it is in the sense that it organises in Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So you have a parade of banners from all of those unions united in the Irish Congress of Trade Union structure, which has a substructure, the Northern Ireland Committee of the Irish Congress of Trade Unions. But of course, many of the workers are involved in unions in Britain as well and go to conferences of their unions in Britain. So it's a marvellous demonstration of workers' unity in practice, and it inspires working people every year, the fact that the march takes place. Now, there are a lot of marches in Northern Ireland. There are 3,000 marches every year. 80% of those marchers are connected to what are called the Loyal Orders, the Orange Order, or to loyalist paramilitary groupings on the Unionist side, the Protestant side. About 20% of the marches are Republican marches, the various splinters of the Republican movement, and often these marches have a paramilitary colouring. You know, the band, the members of the bands, for example, are dressed in paramilitary uniform. And that's the norm in Northern Ireland. So the May Day March really stands out. So it really stands out in the way I've described it. But it also stands out in the negative sense. And what I mean by that is, in 3 occasions during the 1970s, the bureaucracy who controlled the Irish Congress of Trade Unions stood the May Day March down. They cancelled the May Day March. And their stated reason for cancelling the May Day March is that they didn't want to cause any trouble. There was a lot of trouble on the streets. There was conflict. There was nightly gun attacks and bombings, and they thought, we can't bring people onto the street. It just adds to the chaos. Where, of course, we know, active socialists and trade unionists know, the opposite is the case, that if the workers' movement lifts us a little finger, it can help to cut across conflict. So there are many examples I could give from that period, but I'll just give one example, which I'm sure Finn will remember and Jimmy will remember in some detail. And that's in 1977, when the Ulster Unionist United Coalition, Treble UC, called a strike of Protestant workers against the security policy of the British government. The British government at the time was a Labour government, and under the Labour government there's very fierce repression actually of the directed against mainly the Catholic community in the IRA. But nevertheless, Ian Paisley, the comrades would have heard of, and the Treble UC tried to organise this strike. And they called the strike towards the end of April, on April the 25th, just before May Day. They started organising in the factories. The trade union leadership, the heights of the leadership, all they could do was paralysed by indecision, by fear. They sent a delegation to meet the government, but they didn't do anything in the workplaces, in the factories, on the shop floor. That was left to active trade unionists and comrades of ours, comrades then who'd been organised in what was the Labour and Trade Union group, supporters of Militant, who went into the factories, especially in the northwest, in the Derry and Strabane area and in the Belfast area, went into the factories with leaflets, arguing for workers' unity and arguing against the strike, or more properly, the stoppage. We would call it a stoppage. Was even at its height, a strike such as the 1977 strike was only supported by a minority of Protestant workers, and many of those Protestant workers who did not go into work were intimidated, were prevented from going into work. But the trade union movement, the leadership, didn't lift this little finger. Instead, it stood back, didn't organise a May Day march, and was left to rank and file comrades, rank and file trade unionists, to instead try and hold the line over the course of those few days, over the May Day period, without a march to bring together the forces of the trade union movement. There was a petition was circulated in the workplaces by our comrades against the stoppage. The leaders of the trade unions, all they could do was go into the media, onto the radio, and call for workers not to sign the petition. You can imagine that, saying, don't sign this petition against the stoppage. One worker who signed the petition was called Harry Bradshaw. He's a Protestant worker. He's a bus driver, and he was driving his bus a few days after May Day, on May the 10th. He was driving his bus on one of the main roads in Belfast, and the gunman got onto the bus and shot him in the head and killed him because he was driving his bus. The bus workers all went on strike immediately and refused to return to work until they had a guarantee that they would not be attacked again. And that shows just the power of the movement, power of the workers' movement, which was sometimes expressed spontaneously, more often expressed when there's organisation at the shop floor level. But of course, the workers' movement with a conscious leadership, a socialist leadership, or a Marxist leadership, can change history. And May Day can act as a lever. May Day is a weapon. And if May Day in 1977, if the leaders had mobilised on May the 1st, had mobilised the workers' movement for a massive show of strength, then Harry Bradshaw wouldn't have died. That strike would have crumbled before May the 10th, and he wouldn't have been shot by the gunman who shot him. That's how history can be changed. And I think there's dozens of examples over the years and still today, in Sri Lanka and other parts of the world, where the workers' movement, it is sometimes a matter of life and death, and a matter of setting the direction, not just for our movement, but for society as a whole. And we're not at the same peak of conflict and tension here in the north now as we were in 1977, but it's always inherent in the situation, which is why every May Day is a restatement of the unity of the workers' movement and of the role of the workers' movement. And that applies north and south, of course. It's a united movement in Dublin and Belfast.
Some marvelous details, Karen, to show, how the workers have struggled against the most terrible sectarianism, an experience which I think Sri Lankan comrades have also, experienced as well. Comrades, I don't see other indications yet. Please indicate if you wish to come in. Sometimes people are not too sure about how to raise their hand electronically. If you could wave vigorously if you feel that you're not being seen. We've had some marvelous first-hand accounts. We've also had common experiences with changed laws or or the sabotage of labor laws. We've heard the fight against sectarianism, against war, both here in the United States, in Denmark, and elsewhere. We have some marvelous traditions that the workers' movement rises to. I wondered if there could be further indications. Otherwise, I will ask Roger to come in at some point. Yeah.
Well, if nobody else wants to speak now, then yeah, I've got a few general points to make. I think this has been a very good meeting. I think it's been a source of great encouragement to all of us to hear the reports from comrades, really from four of the 5 continents of the world. I think we can say. May Day is, of course, a time to celebrate. It's a time to raise the banner. It's time for the organizations of the working class to reflect on their history and on the tasks that are ahead of them. I think it's also a time, as I say, to really take stock of where we are, where the workers' movement is, what is achieved, what the tasks are facing it. And I would say, if we look at the situation today, where are we? It's a very paradoxical situation. There are plenty of reasons to be jubilant and to be hopeful and to be optimistic, and there are equally very, very strong and quite daunting reasons to be dismayed and even to be pessimistic, because it's a polarization that we've seen in the world today. It's really a paradoxical, a polarized situation, a situation of revolution and of counter-revolution. And it's important that the labour movement takes stock of that and works out, and time is short. We have to try to work out how we're going to go forward and to strike some real blows against capitalism and to seize the opportunities and to take over the world, because that's the task ahead of the working class. And if we don't, then catastrophe looms ahead. We're in a period now where we see that the threat of war, not only the catastrophic war in Ukraine and the warnings that are given by, for instance, by the new Polish president, who says we should stop thinking of ourselves as being in a post-war situation. We could think of Europe as in a pre-war situation now, and we can see how everything is building up. How arms expenditure is being raised at a frenetic rate, and how the talk is all the conscription is being threatened or introduced in countries for the first time for decades and so on. It's a serious situation we are in. We've had massive and courageous struggles, including some that have been referred to today. The struggle in Sri Lanka, the Aragalaya, which Comrade mentioned, which was the whole nation, the whole island almost rose to their feet, and they chased out the president. In Iran, we've seen these heroic struggles, now the struggles of particularly of the women for their democratic rights. But we've seen in the past huge strike waves too, and demonstrations of the youth against the theocratic regime. We've got the rising of the, as Steve told us, of the movement, particularly in the southern states, of the trade union organization in the USA. We've seen in Southern Africa as a whole, of course. We've seen over a longer period, we've seen great advances as well as great retreats since that time. There's been, we saw the Arab Spring and then the defeat of the Arab Spring. We saw the movement in Algeria and Sudan, and again the crushing of those movements. We're in a very, very paradoxical period. Could we say that the struggle of the working class at the time is stalled? Remember also that the recent in the recent years we saw in a number of countries, particularly in Europe, the rise of new left parties. We saw Syriza in Greece, which actually came to power and then threw it away. We saw the rise of Podemos in Spain, of the Rifondazione in Italy. We saw the Corbyn movement in Britain. We saw the Sanders movement in the USA, and there are many, many more examples too. And all of them, we can see how they mobilized huge numbers of people. In Britain, for instance, hundreds of thousands of people joined the Labour Party in the surge for Corbyn. But we've seen also the complete counter-revolution and the collapse and the complete disintegration of the left movement in all of those cases. So what we can say is that the limitations of the programs of those left groups were shown. They thought it was going to be too easy. Let's put it that way. They thought that all they need to do is wave a flag and raise a slogan, and they came up against a brutal resistance on the part of the ruling class. So what do we say is the conclusion from that? We've got the rise of right-wing regimes around the world, most of Europe now. We see, I don't need to list the countries where we have far-right parties in power. And in those countries where that is not the case, the outlook doesn't look very promising. In France, there is a serious danger that Marie Le Pen could take the presidency in a year or two. In Germany, we see the almost unbelievable situation that the social democracy has been overtaken by the racist AfD. We see even in Britain, of course, it looks paradoxically, I mean, it looks superficially as if there's a movement to the left, but the election of a Labour government under Starmer will not be in any way an advance for the working class. It's really a Tory programme that the Labour Party is putting forward. And I think very soon after that, with the dashed hopes that the Starmer government will mean that we could very well see a far-right government.
UK politics.
We could very well see a far-right government in Britain too. I think the Tory party is, well, it's already more or less split. The old Tory party has been more or less shoved aside. And I think there would be a tie-up of the dominant faction of the Tory party now with the Reform Party. Perhaps we'd see a Johnson and Farage joint leadership of a future far-right government in Britain too. So it looks pessimistic from that point of view. But what we have to remember is in all of these right-wing regimes and governments around the world, including also India with Modi, including well, in a sense, even Iran, including, well, all the others, you know, I don't need to list them all, but we see that all of them actually are, at least nominally speaking, they're parliamentary regimes. They didn't come to power on the basis of smashing the working class. The right-wing regimes of the past, of the 30s, came to power after civil wars, after the slaughter of hundreds of thousands, actually amounting in the end to millions of activists and trade unionists and workers who were literally destroyed, killed, their organizations completely smashed to smithereens and so on. And we are not in that situation now. And what that means is the working class still has an opportunity. It has a time. There's been a reverse, but there will be more upsurges, more movements forward, and more opportunities and more tests. But we have to take those opportunities. We have to learn the lessons of all these struggles and all these defeats to get the confidence to know that we can actually end this system, which can only threaten catastrophe for the working class and for humanity, and that we can actually realize the ambitions of generations of workers to build a new world. So I think that's the lesson that we have to reflect on this May Day.
Thanks, Roger, for some broad perspectives in which we are looking at in our efforts to raise the flag again during May Day, which is imminent. Comrades, I don't know if there are other comrades who would like to come in. Some comrades I had to, in terms of maintaining a balance, ask to draw their points to a conclusion. Steve, I see you, but maybe if anyone else could indicate before I could accept Steve. Okay, Steve, please come in.
Yeah, well, I think it's important that we have this international gathering before May Day, and I would urge all the comrades, if they have May Day rallies, if they have posters for their May Day, send them to us, and we will put them up on laborfest.net website so we can see them. If there are any reports, maybe we can have a report page on what happened on May Day in your country, in your city. So we could have an international compilation of May Day struggles around the world. I mean, previously, Pacific, I work as a producer, Pacific, we had an international May Day page. And we had videos, we had pictures, we had reports. And I think we need to use these communication tools to get the struggles of May Day out on a global level. So I would urge, if you can, send pictures, posters, and we'll get them out and build an international movement. And I agree with Roger. We face a global struggle towards world war, war and revolution. And if Trump comes to power in the United States, which is a possibility, you're going to see mass confrontations, general strikes, and actually a global situation of fascism moving globally. You have Milei in Argentina, who's trying to crush the working class. You've had general strikes against him. But this movement of the working class in the United States has been suppressed by the union bureaucracy, which doesn't want general strikes. And I think that will come to a close because workers and unions will have to fight because of the destruction they face unless they do fight. So I think that's the agenda we're facing in May Day 2024, the struggle for power.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, let's, we've heard verbally a roundup. If we could get some pictures and some reports, maybe short statements on video, that would be great. Steve is a great compiler and a keen journalist, and is using the tools of communication we have to the full. And it would be marvelous to be doing a roundup of what actions have followed that we've been anticipating today. Any further points? By the way, those can be sent, to Roger or myself if you have, or posted in any way possible, so that we can centralize them and get them in a particular way, in a particular format, so that it can be circulated internationally. Any other comrades to come in? Well, look, comrades, maybe if Steve, you've come in a few times. I don't know if anyone else who'd been presenting wanted to make an additional point. I think we've otherwise I think we've covered quite a range. Roger's given us a kind of rounded outlook as to the period in which we're in. Very paradoxical, very contradictory, with every kind of obstacle to the working class, but at the same time, all kinds of opportunities which we've been exploring right now. I wonder if I could hand over the chair.
You're muted, David, now.
I wonder if I could pass over the chair to you, just, to conclude. I have something I must attend to here. Unfortunately, just one.
One thing I would suggest, if comrades can make a greetings to the comrades in Namibia who are having a May Day rally, that would be quite welcome, because this, I think, is going to be the only rally that I know about in May Day in Namibia. So if comrades could make a statement of solidarity, maybe we could get that out and read it to them, so to see that there's support all over the world for their struggle for union rights and against the termination of Marcia and other workers at these mines that are subcontractors. So that would be useful to have that at their rally. I think that would be important.
Yeah. Okay, comrades, if there are not further contributions, rather than extend the meeting with one or two little points, we've had a grand exploration of around the world, a roundup in many, both north, south, and east, and we've learning from each other. We've touched on some very concrete issues, as in the campaign of Marcia, to be able to get the security workers organized and to be able to tell the truth about conditions. We've heard of the grinding struggles of workers in Sri Lanka, which have had such an opportunity in the recent past to change everything, and then have found that, you know, the old ruling class has reassembled itself and brought in most terrible austerity. We've learned from the United States of movements to be able to sweep through the country and unionize, gone against every decline that there's been in the past to make up for that, and to be able to explore new working class areas, well, the old working class areas, but explore them in a new way, to be able to unionize, to be able to raise the banner for peace and for union activity in most unorganizable areas, which is now possible, and to be able to raise the banner internationally for the working class to unite north, south, east, and west. And we've gone over many historical examples of how the working class is organized, and been able to put forward the clear ideas for socialism and for workers' unity. Comrades, before we conclude, maybe Roger, would you like to mention what we are planning in the future?
Yes, of course, May Day is Wednesday, and most workers will be celebrating May Day on that day, but in many countries, it's the big marches and the big celebrations are on the weekend close to May Day. Now, next week, actually, the reason we have our May Day celebration today is because the main marches and demonstrations in many countries are going to be following weekends, and many of us will be involved in that, and therefore we will be skipping next week. We won't be having a WIN meeting next week. Of course, we'll be resuming weekly meetings from the week after that, 2 weeks today, and you'll get notices as usual by email of what's coming up. And I would, by the way, appeal to any comrades, invite any comrades who have a suggestion, or who want to lead off, or who want to suggest a topic. Please volunteer, please send your suggestions. This is an open forum, and I think we've all benefited enormously over the last 4 years from the weekly exchanges of experiences and ideas, and we want to hear from everybody. We all have a contribution to make. So see you in 2 weeks, comrades.
And comrades, we celebrate with a salute to all those comrades who are in the front line of struggle, and for all those who have built this movement and will take it forward into the future. Amandla.